It's time for employers to stop requesting references, and here are 3 reasons why. The first reason is reference checks gives too much power to former employers over former employees. Reference checks simply gives former employers the power to retaliate and limit future opportunities for former employees. You probably left your former job because it was toxic, you were being bullied, the pay was low, or maybe none of those things. Maybe you just outgrew it and didn't want to be there. But for whatever reason, you're not permitted, or it's an unwritten rule in interviews that you're not supposed to speak poorly about your former employer. So you can't share that part. Now you have to give that former employer as a reference. And there's a substantial risk with that, depending on the reason why you left, because we know the balance of power is disproportionately tilted toward your former employer. The risk with this is they can say anything that they want and even give off the record information, depending on who the prospective employer speaks to. Now, the prospective employer, 9 times out of 10, will take what they say as gospel, resulting in you losing an opportunity. The second reason is reference checks do not predict or even guarantee good performance. Past performance does not guarantee future results. References do a great job of providing perception, but as we all know, perception is not always reality. Also, they tell 25% of the story, if that. They never paint a complete picture. There are many factors in the workplace that determine how an employee shows up for work and performs. Was the employee set up for success? Was the environment supportive? Was the environment psychologically safe for all? Those things are never mentioned nor considered. Also, studies show that reference checks are a poor predictor of future performance. To be effective, the prospective employer would require substantially more insight about the candidate. And they just don't have time to get that insight. And also, there are legal ramifications. And the third reason is references are not objective. If the references are legally completed, they should only be confirming the dates of employment and if you're eligible for rehire. Lo and behold, if your former employer says you're not eligible for rehire, then that raises a lot of questions and problems for you. And this circles back to number 1, because now the prospective employer is either going to dismiss you altogether and say they're moving on with another candidate, or they may ask you what happened. And if you're honest about it, then here you go. You're talking about a situation in poor taste that happened in another business. And you may still end up not getting the job. So it's like you're on this hamster wheel. Now, the other part of that is if they start sharing off the record information and say, oh, that person has such an attitude, they're only giving a percentage of the story. They're not telling the whole story. And that doesn't sound good either. So it's not objective. It's based on whatever the person thinks that's given the reference. And that's fundamentally unfair. That's too much control.